more Catalog and Cocktails, your honest, no BS, non-salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. I'm Tim Gasper, longtime data nerd product guy, joined by Juan Cicada and some special guests today. Juan, how are you?
Great, Tim. It is always a pleasure to take a break in the middle of your day or whenever you're listening to us. And just we love being in your ears and talking about data, analytics, and AI and everything. And today we are super excited. We have the one and onlys. Here we have the Tony Baer and Matt Housley, who are, again, if you guys don't know who they are, if you all don't know who they are, then you've literally been living underneath a rock. Like, I think in less than 6 months, they started a podcast on YouTube. It's about data, and it's gone to like 15,000 subscribers. It is amazing what you guys have been doing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're so honored to guys have you here. How are you doing?
Good. It's been a lot of fun. I think it's exceeded our expectations in a lot of ways, and we're just trying to figure out where to take it next in terms of themes and guests and everything else. But yeah, had a great kind of holiday break. We were still working over that break a bit, but I really enjoyed the holidays, the new year, and everything else. Tony, take it away.
It was a crazy holiday, basically, because we're actually combining two holidays, combining Hanukkah and doing what I call Jewish Christmas. And what it meant was back-to-back weekends of overnight stays in Boston and DC. In between, then getting ready our year-end forecasts. Other than that, it was quite restful. Even though during that time, Juan, I was having conversation with you down in Columbia, and I was saying, Juan, take a break.
In 3 weeks, I've been with my two little kids, my wife, in 2 different countries and 4 different houses. So yeah, it's been.
Oh man, that sounds intense. I've just been local in Salt Lake City, which was way easier.
All right, well, let's kick it up.
I just stayed local. It's easier to just stay home, relax.
I actually was happy that I stayed local for Thanksgiving. And my wife and I were talking about, like, what are we gonna do for Thanksgiving? Like, let's just stay home again. We're not gonna do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've slowed down my travel quite a lot. Maybe I'll get back into it, but there's something nice about just being home and working from there.
So tell and toast. What are you all drinking for? What are you all drinking, and what do you all want to toast for?
Well, I'll start that right now. I'm just drinking water, but after this, when we get done, and I pat myself on the back for surviving another podcast, is I'm going to break open a bottle of Goose Island Bourbon County Imperial Stout. It's 14.7 ABV.
Nice.
You don't mess around with that stuff.
No,
yeah, that'll punch out.
Hey, Tony, we should be having this podcast after you drink that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't want my reputation to get totally trashed. It's bad enough as it is.
Matt, how about you?
Okay, so I'm really boring right now. I may try to drink some kind of blackberry cider later, but this is just 7-Up in a wine glass. So, and then this is coffee in a whiskey glass. It's a High West whiskey glass,
Whoa.
Park City, Utah. So check out High West. A little plug here, basically. And my toast is, I think I want to toast 2 careers. And the reason I'm saying that is that I think there's a lot of career uncertainty right now in data and out of data and everywhere in tech and actually everywhere in the economy. And so I think that we should say, you know what, there is a future in careers. AI is going to change things, but there are lots of great opportunities out there. Let's figure out what those are. If you're young and just getting into the job market, let's show us what can be done. And if you're more of an old hat like me, let's try to pave a path for the next generation.
Yeah, I want to interject something in there because I had a conversation yesterday, and I'm saying this not just to suck up to you, Juan, but but anyway, no, I was this is someone who was in transition, and I was looking. This is basically has a lot to do with the forecast that I've put out, which is I think where a lot of the action is going to be, and where basically in the short run. AI is going to create more of a need for as opposed to replacing is in this whole area of semantics and ontologies. And that's a skill that's not exactly very widespread at all. And so, yeah, I think that's something to be looking at.
Okay. You're making me very, very happy right now.
I'm just saying that to suck up to you, Juan. Actually, I take it all back.
Tim, what's up with you? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Texas beer here for Real Ale. It's the Real
Nice.
Heavy Scotch Ale. I was actually
Oh,
drinking
man.
their stout yesterday. So Tony, when you were talking about stouts, I was
Yes.
about
I
that.
love stouts. I'll have to see
Yeah.
that if they have that in the state liquor store here. Everything goes to the state liquor
Yeah.
store.
Does the state actually sell liquor there? I thought Utah was a dry state.
We are not a dry state, in fact, but if you want to buy, well, almost anything except for fairly light beer, you have to go to the state liquor store, where you can get High West whiskey and, High Point beer, but it's what they choose, right? It is not a free market, which is kind of interesting for a state that
That was
claims
like
it's not a free
Pennsylvania, where I went to school. It's the same thing there.
Get the curated experience.
Yeah.
Juan, what are you drinking?
I have something that you find really interesting in Mexico, which is a Smirnoff vodka, which is flavored of tamarind. The tamarind.
Ooh.
Wow.
It's actually really good that I'm just drinking it by itself with ice.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, you can make cocktails with it, but like it's actually it's really good. I mean, it's already kind of a cocktail by itself. So
I was going to say.
So
Does
all
it
right,
count?
well, cheers for the kickoff of 2026 of careers of semantics and
Maybe careers in semantics.
There we go.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So let's kick it off then. I mean, guys, honest, no BS. Like, let's just rant. What's on your mind? You already kicked it off with a couple of things, but yeah, you guys, we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Okay. What, you want to go first, Tony? You want me to start ranting?
Let's go in reverse alphabetical order this time.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with AI magical thinking. And I'm going to lead with a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction author, who said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I feel like that's how people approached LLMs. And to be sure, there was a magical element, right? You just feed in all this training data, and then suddenly you had this chatbot that could like mimic human writing and human behavior to some extent. And then the cracks started to appear. But people continued to engage in that magical thinking. And you see this all the time on LinkedIn. So Tony today just made a post about how we need to think about things like semantics and ontology and knowledge graphs in order to contextualize database queries and LLMs. And this guy posted, he's like, oh, well, that sounds like more infrastructure. We're always talking about more infrastructure. And really, you just need a tool that provides automated context to LLMs. And I'm thinking, well, isn't that what those things basically are?
Yeah.
And it turns out this guy was selling something. So good luck to him. I get it, but he's pitching more infrastructure and then saying that it's not infrastructure. But in general, I feel like there's so much of this. Like, for example, another post from Jessica Talisman about ontologies, and someone posts on there, well, LLMs can just generate your ontologies. And like, I'm actually going to let Juan respond to that. Can LLMs just generate your ontologies?
They can, right?
Right.
Which is the really cool thing, but it doesn't
Right.
mean that that's the absolute thing. The problem has been solved, right? This
Exactly.
I think the important thing to think about of what ontologies have been doing for so long. It's about a shared understanding, and so we can each generate our own version of the world, and that's fine.
Right.
But then if we want to be able to have an agreement and move forward, like we need to have that shared understanding. And that's the stuff that we just don't want to go do. That's the people process side type of thing. And we are very clearly going, if we don't deal with this, we're going to still have the same problems that we've been bitching about for the last 30 plus years.
Right.
I don't know how many customers I have. Like that problem's not going to go LLMs. LLMs are just going to generate more noise. Like, oh, I thought I had 10 different versions of customer. Now I have 25 different versions of customer.
Exactly. Yeah. And another thing I want to say is that ontologies, again, I'm not the expert here. I'll defer to you on that. But as I understand it, ontologies are both descriptive and prescriptive. So descriptive meaning what is my organization right now? And prescriptive in the sense that people make decisions about what they want the organization to look like. And that also flows into the ontology. And I feel like a lot of what we're doing here is abdicating decision-making responsibility to machines that are statistical in nature and may not even have access to the descriptive part. They're struggling with the descriptive part, and we're trying to also force them to do the prescriptive part. And humans need to be involved in both of those, even if we use LLMs as a tool to aid us in the process.
Yeah. I like that, Juan, you said shared understanding, right? I think that's really important. And I do think that whether it's catalogs or new purpose-built tools, there's going to be a way to use AI to help generate ontologies and
Right.
manage your semantics. In fact, it needs to be that way because when people had to do it on their own, they didn't do that great of a job of keeping up with it, right? So
Right.
AI better help. But I feel like that shared understanding is really important. You have to have that, and it's dynamic, right? Organizations are constantly
Mhm.
shifting, and so this isn't something that's simple, right? It's something that I think is going to be relatively complex, even though necessary.
You know what's interesting about all this is that this is really the same battle we've been fighting for decades. It's just that I think AI has just raised the urgency of this
Mm.
and given us basically the illusion that this can all be automated. But I just
Mhm.
remember back to things like the enterprise data model in the 1980s with Case. I remember with the whole what was supposed to be the magic of business process modeling.
Yeah.
Which then, of course, we then start saying, well, we can automate this with with robotic food process management, and each time, I mean, like we've just put so much of our blind faith in automation, and what's really you talking about when you talk about a rant right now, what's really peeing me off is anytime anybody talks about AGI. I mean, come bloody on. I'm really censoring myself there. There'll be a lot of expletives coming out. But it's like I mean, you're gonna try to tell me that a machine that is essentially non-deterministic and two, lacks context can now essentially mimic the human consciousness. Give me a break.
Well, not just mimic the human consciousness, but be more powerful. That I think people are very quickly they go from AGI to super intelligence,
Right.
SI,
Right.
right?
But that's
Um,
Elon Musk.
yeah,
I mean, a lot of people,
a lot of people,
AI
right?
hype
Because like, well, you
people.
get to AGI and then boom, and then
Yeah.
you hit
Yeah.
the inflection point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to see, how 3 years from now the Oracle is going to run the entire world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
Well,
it's the abdication of responsibility, right? And the funny thing is, we've had super intelligence for a long time in the sense that even with the very early computers like ENIAC, suddenly you could do things that humans could not do, right?
right.
Even back then, you could do scales of simulations of nuclear weapons, for example, that no human could possibly do. And yet, really basic things like back then, they couldn't really do spelling correction. That came later. A lot of really basic stuff they could not do. And I feel like we're heading into another era where we'll see more powerful capabilities, but the idea of replacing humans still doesn't
I
make a
think
lot
we're
of sense.
confusing scale, with
Yeah.
intelligence. And the thing is that there is a role for both. I mean, the fact is, doing these complex simulations, and one of the things I could a great potential for generative models. So I didn't say language models here, generative models, because I mean, instead of language, it could be like molecular modeling. Is doing let's say clinical research or drug research, looking at potential new drugs. And what this reminds me of is back to my very early days. Actually, this is my first job out of school about 800 years ago. I was a tech writer for the Federal Solar Energy Research Program. That's why I was living in Colorado. It's like a new organization, and a bunch of us recent grads who had a full-time job and no papers to do. Woohoo, let's party. But I remember meeting after hours this scientist. He was a brilliant scientist, a brilliant physicist. And he was working at that time. We were using computer printouts. I think this was even before this, during the era of punch cards. And he actually, it was kind of like he sort of figuratively took me on his lap, so to speak. I mean, not literally, obviously, and explained to me what he was doing. He was using basically mathematical modeling in the computer to look at potential, compounds that might have better photovoltaic properties than silicon. It was at the same types of, atomic or molecular, semiconductor properties. And if you really scale that, with generative models, it could do wonders, for instance, like discovering of new drugs. But again, that's not replacing human intelligence; it's scaling it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Mhm.
what about obviously agentic architectures is becoming agentic workflows, agentic architectures, et cetera, are becoming kind of a focus where people are trying to wrap a lot of deterministic logic around LLMs, and it certainly unlocks new ways of combining things, right? So now it's not just about the LLM, it's about, well, maybe there's some small language models, maybe it needs to call out to a machine learning, more of a classical machine learning model. Maybe it's actually going to go through a traditional if this then that rule set, and so I think we see a lot of companies testing out more of these kind of agentic architecture approaches to try to tackle some of these problems, maybe in lieu of actually addressing ontologies and semantics in a more direct way. But do you see that as a positive direction that things are going?
Absolutely, from my perspective. So let me bring up one thing here. Do you know Lachlan Schwanen, perchance? He's written a whole bunch of books. So his latest book is called Generative AI Design Patterns from O'Reilly. We actually hosted him on our show. At least his episode a couple weeks ago. But anyway, fantastic book. Even if you're not technical, if you're interested in how LLMs work, and more importantly, how the machinery around them works, read the book, because you'll see just what goes into making these work and making them more deterministic. But that's basically what this book is all about, is like, how do we build the scaffolding around LLMs to actually make them useful and make them deterministic when they need to be deterministic, and protect ourselves from like bad behavior of LLMs. So yeah, I recommend that. But I think it's part of a broader trend of like the maturation of the field of generative AI in some sense.
Look, the thing is, I see some very positive signs, and actually, and these are the types of signs of like where we're learning as we go along. And for instance, like the whole dealing with the issue of catastrophic forgetting. And it's a type of thing which, well, we didn't necessarily think. We thought, well, we have these big models and we want to now fine tune them and make them more relevant. But oops, if we get a little too caught up and do too much fine tuning, they can start to forget some of their generalized tuning and some of the tuning which we wanted there. And this is not a flaw in the idea. It's more like this is what we're learning as we go.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraged to see sort of common sense steps, like that happen. Just like what Matt's talking about with agents, where maybe we might, because an agent itself is non-deterministic, but on the other hand, you could put some deterministic program around that agent. And so the idea is that, it's, you're kind of like, putting in sort of safeguards along the way, but this is the type of thing that we're only going to learn by doing.
Yeah, it goes back to everybody's citing that MIT report that 95% of all Gen AI projects are failing. I'm like, yeah, but that's what we expect and what we actually want to go do, because we defined, Thomas Edison found 999 ways of how not to make a light bulb, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we're going through right now, and it's the innovators and the early adopters who are, mainly innovators, are really doing this stuff, and that's how we advance and that's how we learn these things. So I don't feel discouraged about that. I'm like, that's actually great. We're figuring out quickly how not to do things,
right?
And then that's when the laggards later on, the late majorities, they just latch on things because they don't want to go they don't like to take risks. So I'm waiting somebody else to take that risk, and once it's kind of all figured out more mainstream, then we'll follow up with that.
Yeah. Did anyone read any of the interviews with Jan LeCun or however you pronounce his name, after he left Meta? He kind of had some interesting things to say about
some of his tweets and headlines, but not some of the deeper stuff. He definitely used the opportunity of leaving Facebook and Meta. All right, let me be honest, no BS, right?
Yeah. So basically, he kind of said some things related to what you were saying, Juan, in the sense he said, LLMs are fantastic, but this is a big research opportunity to extend those capabilities beyond just the pure LLM. And what he says he's seeing in many companies, not just Meta, is that we're just pushing harder and harder on LLMs instead of looking at expanding their capabilities beyond just pure expansion of parameters. And I think part of our making LLMs better is the type of stuff that Locke is talking about, where we build scaffolding around them. But part of it is just like building different types of models that encompass LLM capabilities.
Yeah.
Not to diminish the what an LLM is and how magic it looks like, but it is another great, amazing tool. Like, go back to late 70s and early 80s. You have this thing called a database. Oh my God, what's a database thing? And then all this stuff happened, right? This web thing came out. It changed the world, right? This is just another thing. This is a web moment and stuff. And then we're building a bunch of things, and we're gonna build on the shoulders of the giants. That's the moment that we're in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Agree. And yeah, I mean, to your point, Juan, it's hard to know which path to pursue, right? Like, do you pursue the path of taking the new tool and then building new things around it, or do you take the path of extending the tool itself and try to do new things with
I
it?
also
Yeah,
think
that's
that
a good
that
point.
also depends. It's a bit generational.
Yeah.
So folks who are growing up and maturing and the profession is right now where everything for them is an LLM, they think that I need
Yeah.
to do more. For
Yeah.
people who, I mean, maybe us in this room right here, we're like, no, we've seen things come and go. Like we know
Yeah.
that not everything. I got a hammer now. Everything is a nail. No, we know that that's not.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we figure out that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
but we
But
need
the thing,
both.
yeah,
For sure.
there's another
Yeah.
fear that I have right now, and I'm hoping that basically that we get some common sense along the way, which is the and it's kind of, to me it's signified or by OpenAI, which is that for what they're looking for, it's like even if we could even if they could develop models that could operate on that type of scale, the resource footprint
Mhm.
is just it'll make basically crypto mining look trivial by comparison. And is there enough water and power? And what I'm hoping along the way, I mean, I'm just hoping that they don't drag all this investment. In other words, like one company I think I have a strong dislike for is SoftBank, because they always seem to go for every big thing because it's big, like WeWork. And what I worry about is where we put, even though we have a lot of these very sensible, smaller ideas, coming in, and for instance, like I'll give a shout out to IBM. They're really focusing in on that part of the spectrum there, that the huge sunk investments in these in this gold rush opportunities. I'm afraid it's kind of like the noise will be drowning things out, and it could force a retrenchment, an unnecessary retrenchment. So I'm hoping that the forces of common sense start to prevail, because I mean, for instance, I just don't think Stargate is possible, but I think a lot of cool things short of Stargate are or will be.
Yeah, Tony, that comment you made reminded me of this concept of king making that
Yes.
the big VCs tend to do, right? Where
Yep,
they're like,
yep.
okay, there's going to be a category, and if we pump enough money into one or two players, then
Yeah.
they have no choice but to win that category.
Right.
But in a market like AI, and in particularly around frontier AI and things like that, I don't think we 100% know what the future needs to look like.
Yep.
And
Right.
so, unless in addition to giving growth and scale capital, you're also allowing new ideas to flourish.
Right.
We're potentially going to lock ourselves down one path that,
Yeah.
maybe we could get to someplace better faster if we actually had more of a diversity of ideas going on.
Right.
Yeah. And it is remarkable that we have, I mean, how many foundation model makers do you have now? I mean, are we talking like 5 big players or more? That's kind of like if you go back to Google search, Google very quickly emerged as the sole player in that market. Like they kind of wiped out their competition very quickly. Microsoft tried to make a comeback with Bing and it just didn't really work. It's kind of bizarre to have like 5 big players to competing to be the king, and with billions of dollars and tens of billions of dollars investment. Sorry,
we have that for data, but we have that for databases, right?
That's
I mean,
fair with data. Yeah.
We had Oracle, we had Microsoft, right? We had Sybase. I mean, they eventually then started to merge, and now you have you still have the big relational databases, still 4 or 5, right? So I think that's how I see this.
That's the analogy.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there's no question that at some point there's going to be some consolidation, but I think there's a little bit of a difference between, let's say, frontier models and say databases, besides the fact they're 2 different things. But more to the point is that different models are going to have different strengths. And so I don't think we're ever going to, I don't think it's going to be like search where we end up basically, getting one basically default standard. I think I think what will happen essentially is that, and what would make sense is if we're down to 4 or 5, I think that's a manageable number. I think what would not be manageable is we have like 12 or 15 of these humongous frontier models. I don't think that's sustainable, but I think it will make sense. I mean, for instance, like Claude, Anthropic Claude seems to be much stronger in coding, for instance. Gemini is basically emerged as basically very strong with multimodal, and so I could see where we have, let's say, about 4 or 5 large let's say I don't want to call them category killers but large, let's say large foundation models that each have a certain unique combination of strengths. And then, of course, obviously, I believe that there's just, small is beautiful. There will be a long tail, and that long tail will be very specific. But back to the case, I think 4 or 5 foundation models, if it winnows down to it, I think would be a healthy development.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see too if they do specialize, right? I think right now
Yeah.
they're trying very hard to, like, everybody wants to be the king of code, for example, right?
Right.
Because I think they all see that if you get good at coding, then that could be a feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
But specialization would actually be helpful.
This is really reminding me of databases. Like if you go to the DB Engine's website for their ranking, like you think about the 4 or 5 big relational databases.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. There's holy crap! There's 387 databases on the list of DB Engine's ranking.
Right.
There's a long tail of that stuff for sure.
Yeah.
And the top ones there are Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, Postgres, Mongo, Snowflake, Redis, Databricks, IBM DB2, and Elasticsearch are the top 10.
Yeah.
My concern with the long tail and the competition in the market is just the amount of money we're spending. Like what did OpenAI just raised? Was it $30 billion? And so I think with databases, I think the number I've heard is like, I don't remember who said this, but like $2 billion to kind of develop a database that's really bulletproof and production ready.
Mm-hmm.
You're spending, what has OpenAI spent so far? I mean, are we talking close to 60 billion or something like that?
Yeah.
Not everyone can spend that way and survive, right, in the long term.
Right.
Like you cannot have that many players spending that kind of money. I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem sustainable.
I think there's a difference in the long tail of models versus the long tail of databases, which is that, I mean, yes, you have your data, I mean, let's say Aerospike or something like that. And they had a certain sort of moment in the sun, maybe about 10 years ago. On the other hand, I could see with models, though, that there are going to be some very specific uses and use cases, and very so I could see with models, I could see a long tail of very domain specific models, and that makes sense. They're not trying to be all things to all people. What I worry about, like Matt, what you're saying is that we have 20 of these frontier guys who are trying to be all things to all people and soaking up all the capital. That would worry me.
Yeah.
So I think we talked a bit about semantics and ontologies. We talked about AI and kind of AI agents, AI frontier AI.
Right.
What else is big on your radar as we go into 2026?
I'll give you. So I made 4 predictions on our show for 2026, which came out a couple days ago. Anyway, one of those was about graphs, and I know people talk about graphs every year. Tony made the point that we've been predicting the year of the graph over and over again. But one of my predictions is that maybe starting in 26, maybe it will take a little bit longer, but graphs will become sort of an analyst's superpower. And the reason we interviewed Waymo Liu, whom you guys might know from PuppyGraph, and their concept is instead of creating data that's specifically in a graph format, take your normalized schema and then use graph analytics on it.
Right.
And I think this might be a concept whose time has finally come, whether it's PuppyGraph or some other company. But it's funny that the main impediment to this actually is that we've moved away from normalization over the last many years. We've sort of driven away from it.
I met this guy. It's like, the title of my PhD was integrating relational databases with semantic web. So it was literally, I was doing all the SPARQL SQL translations and stuff. I had that done 15 years ago, which is like, I mean,
we can see we can see the tire tracks in your forehead.
Anyway, but yes, finally. So it's like, finally, people are getting there, but then this is literally the definition of 1 step forward, but 2 steps back. I'm like, yes, step forward on this, but now the normalization. Modeling.
History goes in cycles. It's just that each time we come at it from a different starting point, and hopefully with a little more wisdom than the last time. I mean, it's the same thing with semantics. I mean, like, they're not new. I mean, like, I mean, business objects universe back in 1995 or something, or maybe a little, give or take a few years. But of course, when you look at the metadata for any enterprise application, I mean, we didn't call it semantics, but that's what it was. It's a recent development. They're now trying to sort of open it up, through data sharing.
Yeah.
So I mean, and we, so I mean, we're gonna just see this thing. I mean, it's a cycle, and it's just the natural. I mean, look at, for instance, like compute and storage, which is that during the big data era, we were bringing compute to the data. Then with the cloud, we were separating it again. And again, not that it was wrong at that particular, it was that it was what we knew at that time. It was the technology that we had at that time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that if we did it differently in the past, it was wrong. It was just, that was what was possible. Same thing with, I remember I was at an AI conference in Seattle back in, guess the year, 1987.
Wow. Okay.
1987. I had to cut short a trip to London to do this. So I remember it very distinctly. And and I remember the piece that I wrote out of that said, AI is out, expert systems are in. But that's because it wasn't because AI was bad, is that this is during the AI winter. We did not have the compute power. We didn't have the data, but we did have the technology with the Pentium. I don't know if it was a 386 or 40, whatever. Or the
386
Pentium.
in 1987.
Yeah, that we could do rules.
Yeah.
And that was doable. And for that time, that was the right thing to do, even though our expectations may have been inflated. So it's the same thing with all
so
this.
I love what you said, things like they literally been together and separated. We see this constantly in computing.
Yep.
I mean, if you think about like databases, before relational databases, you had network hierarchical databases, which were actually graph databases, right? But then the writing the queries and the data were all tightly coupled. The relational model comes around the COD, and they basically, his papers about the independence. So like, I want to be able to separate all this stuff, right? Data can be stored one way. I want to be able to logically do this. And then we kind of bring together what's the big thing in the 80s is object-oriented databases. And
oh my God.
We're now tightly coupling the programming languages because object-oriented, then my databases are tightly together. Those come together again, and then that's where you have data line, and then these things come separated.
And you have ORM.
Exactly. Yeah. And ORM is like, oh, we separated too much. So we have ORM, so we can bring it back together. So the history of computing when it comes to data and knowledge has always been, we're together. No, we're now two together. Let's go apart. Oh, now we're two apart. Let's come bring together. This has constantly been the history of it for the last 40, 50 years. And it's just fascinating to go see this cycle.
But I think go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying now I think what we're seeing also is people thinking about going back to the LLMs, you can do everything. Oh, I'm going to go train my LLM. I'm tightly coupling my LLM with my data, and people are realizing, no, that thing should be separate. So that's another example.
Well, that's the whole idea of MCP. But the other thing, and I think to that, and the same thing with databases, I think, and this is something which makes me optimistic, which is that, when you look at, essentially, the advances, in scale and power of compute, of network and storage, it allows us to do a lot of really cool things. And for one thing it allows us to do, workload isolation. And so you could have, for instance, you could have this data, which is replicated. You could have, we've seen over the past year, one of the trends I've seen is like a huge popularity of the zero ETL pattern, which kind of, it's like an extension of basically change data capture. Where essentially we're going to be having database, Databricks is scheduling an analyst briefing later this week to give us an update on Lakebase. But the whole idea there is you're feeding this data kind of concurrently to both your Lakehouse and to this Postgres PostgreSQL instance, and it and in a sense these are views, and it's the same thing with graph. You can have a graph view. Now, getting back, Matt, to what you're talking about, I've been very, I was looking over the past year, so I thought last year was going to be the year of GraphRag, and I actually was kind of underwhelmed in terms of, I haven't seen a lot of implementation. I've seen a lot of talk, but I think the reason for that is it's hard to put these things together. But on the other hand, if you're using AI, in this case, I think machine learning, not necessarily language models, and looking at the patterns of connections, you can sort of basically get that first draft of a graph, which then, again, we need humans in this to kind of take a look at all that. But at least it scales, it scales humans where it could probably, Matt, make your finally, maybe make 2026 the year of the graph. It might finally happen, Matt. Pinch yourself.
Well, I'm gonna go back to what Juan was saying just a second ago, and that is fundamentally what you're talking about is you were doing this back a long time ago during your PhD. I think what's needed with graphs is not so much a technology change, but a cultural change. Like this idea that you can apply graphs to in-place data and getting analysts trained to do that, that's going to take time, no matter how good the technology is. But I do feel like there's enough of a compelling motivation and the technology is available to make that possible now. But we'll see.
You don't have to worry about the canonical storage because basically because we've separated compute from data, and the networks are and the connectivity, the backbones are really fast. these can be virtualized views.
If we can normalize our data enough to make it work. Sorry, Juan, go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
So what is that cultural change that's needed? So it's like, think about data modeling, right? Like, but what are the
Yeah.
what's the culture change? What's the education? What are the top 3 things that new people, when you're kind of going into your toasting things about careers evolving, right? Like, if your career's evolving, you need to be focusing on. What are those top 3 things?
Yeah, so I'm actually just going to give you one right now, very simple, and then I'm going to think about the others because that's a very good question.
Yeah.
So I ran a data engineering class during fall semester, had great students in it, but we were it was a new class, so we were figuring out the curriculum as we went along. So we hosted Waymo, and I'm like, this is really cool. Let's just do it in our class. And so I had the students just go through all the graph tutorials that they have for Puppy Graph, and that would be a good starting point because you can realize, oh, there's all this, to your point, Juan, graph structure already in the data if I know how to experiment with it.
Right.
And fundamentally, the very first step for embarking on any of this technology is just to try it out and get some intuition for how it works. You can talk about it all day long, but once you see, oh, I have a bunch of network data and I run that's relational but normalized, and I run these graph queries on it, I can uncover relationships between nodes and actors and IP addresses. That is a really cool insight, but you have to kind of experience it, even in the age of AI.
But actually, Matt, I think to what you're talking there, and I think it's basically having the mindset. And the thing is, you're capturing, basically, and you're dealing with the youth of America, and so therefore, these folks, you're basically intersecting with them before their minds have gotten set, and so before we've gotten into this relational mindset, where now we need to kind of rethink this. Okay, well, how do we think this in terms of all these connections, many connections? Well, if this becomes instinctive with people, with students who are just data science, computer scientists, data scientists who are just starting to look at data now, it might become more instinctive.
Yeah, I'd love it for it to become instinctive, because how did we get started in data? Well, you try out Pandas, you try out Excel, you try out SQL, and you're like, oh, this is really cool that I can do these aggregations and get statistics with a single query. And I think we need the same kind of experience with graphs to get people in that mindset.
So I mean, that's actually a great point. How do you get started in data? Well, you just try Excel, right? You try Pandas. You're learning Python. So people have curiosity about. They already have the curiosity about data. So is there like they're lacking more curiosity? I don't think so. So is it like they're just too much in their bubble? We need to open it up. Like what is that next step? Like, because I feel that if they're already curious doing things in data, how do they get curious to go do things outside of your traditional relational data?
And for graphs specifically, it would just be basically go to Puppy Graph's website. They have this whole blog of examples that you can try on your own machine. That's where I would start. And hopefully we'll see more things like that. Juan, you might know some resources for people who are graph curious, right? Who want to take existing data sets and just play around with them.
That's right. Well, we'll hold it off for our resource. Resources called thing. That's great. All right. Anything else on your mind before we start wrapping up? Because I love this. There's so much stuff you guys are reading through. What one topic that I had here, I'm going to bring it up now that we're talking about graphs and nexus. This whole notion of context graphs. I don't know if you've been following that thing.
Not really. It sounds related to what we're talking about. Where is this discussion happening?
Go for it.
Apparently.
Okay. No, then we'll hold on for later, right? I don't.
Oh, okay.
I thought we were going to. One, I thought I was going to learn something in this discussion.
No, I saw it around end of December. There was this blog post that came out from Foundation Capital, one of the venture firms, and about context graph, which in reality is, I think it's more about decisions. Like keeping track of your decision traces around things. And that has gone up. That has at least in all of my LinkedIn feeds and even Twitter X feed, like that's a big popular thing going on. And I'm like,
wow.
I'm actually overwhelmed myself. I don't have an opinion at this moment.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't seen it on LinkedIn, so I must just follow different people. So I need to obviously follow more of the people that you're following.
Yeah.
All right. What else is on your mind before we want to go give our takeaways? Any final thoughts, parting thoughts?
I think, well, number one, I think the general thought, and I can, is basically look at the details. Don't get caught up by by these overwhelmingly big visions, but take a look at what's around you and use common sense. And so that's where I'm looking at things like, domain models, or taking a different view, or adding another view of data. Kind of look to the adjacencies. And I think, and the thing is that with the cloud, with the ability to isolate workloads, it gives you the opportunity to do a lot of this. You're kind of like doing a lot of simulation of like how you see the world, whether it be through data, whether it be through models.
I like that. Matt, any final thoughts from you in terms of?
I'm gonna leave it there. I've been talking enough.
All right. Well, the honest no BS is that we usually do our lightning round, but this was too fun. I didn't want to stop to go lightning round. Let's go
We blocked the lightning round.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to our takeaways. So Tim, take us away with takeaways.
Yeah. So we usually don't mention the toasts, but actually, I think it's worthwhile to mention the toast this time because Tony, you mentioned about like AI is going to need the skills of semantics and ontologies.
Yes.
Which I think is a key theme and a key insight. I think a lot of folks in both the data and the AI side, if you think of that as a bit of a Venn diagram, are now thinking a lot about. And then Matt, you toasted to careers and how careers are evolving and changing and shifting. In maybe in some ways for the better, in some ways for the scarier, but that's an interesting area that a lot of folks are, I think, focused on, and especially young people are looking for advice on. So I think those were very good toasts. We started off talking about AI magical thinking. The quote are from Arthur Clarke about any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And at first we all got very excited about the magic, but I think we're now all realizing that, there is no such thing as a silver bullet. It's usually lead bullets. And the lead bullets are things like agentic architectures and ontologies and context and good old fashioned, if this, then that, and things like that. And so I think that's, we talked a little bit about how, LLMs, maybe they can generate an ontology for you, but shared understanding is very important. Ontologies, enterprise data models, data modeling in general, alive and well, and probably needs to be more alive and more well. So a lot that's there to discuss. And then, we shouldn't confuse scale with intelligence. We started to talk about like frontier AI and some of the things going on, all the money that's being pumped into the AI space. We'll see where that goes. Maybe, our robotic overlord comes out of all of this and we're like, hey, I was wrong. The oracle is created. But more likely is intelligence is going to be more complex and involve lots of different kinds of models.
Yes.
So, Juan, what about you? What were your big takeaways?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about agentic architectures, right? So we're building out the scaffolding around LLMs to make them deterministic when they have to be. We're dealing with these issues of catastrophic forgetting, right? You're losing generalization versus you have too much generalization. So that's that balance that we're figuring out. There's really a lot of new opportunities to extend beyond LLMs. And this is like what we're discussing about with John LeCun when he's left. It's like there's so many people who are just focusing just on LLMs, that's their thing, but you should be able to focus on there's other ways of doing that. LLM is just one of those tools.
Right.
And each model has their own strength. I really love how we did a discussion about how LLMs may have this kind of parallel to like databases. You'll have these handful of like the frontier models, the big ones, there are 4 or 5, and there will be a long tail that will be very specific for things. And then we also discussed about, hey, graphs. I mean, every year we talk about, is this the year of the graph? I mean, by the way, I think there's a panel that I have recorded on YouTube at Data Day Texas, parentheses, everybody go to Data Day Texas.
Yes.
I got my code honest no BS, get a discount with that one.
Our code is it's about data, all caps. No,
there you go. Choose one. Let them know that we're helping the community. And then I think like 5 years ago I was at a panel like this is the year of the graph. But anyways, starting in 2026, you're saying, Matt, that graphs will become an analyst superpower. What we're seeing is like mapping graphs over normalized relational schemas, but that means that we actually have to be modeling the data, and that's the part that's missing. We discussed around the separation of things in computation. We separated compute and storage, and we kind of like go through this history of what comes around, goes around. There's been a lot of talk about knowledge graph, but not that much of actually seeing this in practice. We talk about we need more cultural change, and it's like really it's just taking that curiosity. Matt, you give your example of like in your data engineering course, you're just running through some graph tutorials. Just go try it out, and then when you realize if you have your data normalized, you can really take advantage of a lot of this graph thinking. How do you get into data? You try out things with Excel, you try things with Panda. Like that's when you go do things to get more graph curious. And Tony, your final thought, I love this. Take a look at the details and use your common sense. Don't just look at the higher level trends and hype. Look at the edges. Guys, anything we missed?
I
think that's about it. That's an amazing summary.
I think my mind is fried at this point. You've sucked all the intelligence. What little was left out of it.
All right. So to wrap up, the 3 questions for you guys. So what's your advice? Who should we invite next? And what resources do you follow?
So maybe starting with advice.
Oh gosh.
About data, about life, about anything.
I'm going to actually steal Tony's and basically say, watch what in your career development, watch what's happening around you, because the career field is changing so fast. Watch what skills are really valuable, and then jump on those skills. Granted,
And what I'll say
hard.
is kind of like sort of an extension of that, which is that not just look at the adjacencies, but look at also like who you're working with and where are they coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, we have all this great technology, but like if we're all siloed, we're just solving the same narrow problems all over again. And I think, to me, that where it's really coming to fore is basically in governance, which is data governance and AI governance. And one things that I've been very disappointed in, is I've seen very little progress in bridging those silos, and I would like to see that. That would be a type of thing I would love to see this year. Is that finally we start to correlate, what's the lineage of data against the lineage of the model, and what are the impacts.
Great call out.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. And then let's see who you should invite next. Okay, Lakshmanan, invite him. He's awesome. You can check out his episode with us to get a flavor of what you could talk about. I'll send you guys an invitation or an intro.
Yeah, and I'll actually make kind of a sort of an out of the blue, which is this is just someone who seems to have this ear to the ground and is just everywhere all the time. But I would take Bruno Azizo, who's currently at IBM.
Cool guy.
We're going to actually have him on our show in a couple of weeks, but yeah, he's you can't pin this guy down, but he's been everywhere.
Yeah, no, I'm a Bruno fan. I love following him. Yeah, definitely. Good call out. I'm actually surprised nobody's called out Bruno before. I don't think so.
Yeah,
really.
We've hung out with him in many contexts, but he hasn't come on the show yet. He should.
Really? Okay. Well, we'll have to. Well, we get him first. So there.
All right. So to wrap up, what resources do you guys follow? How do you guys learn? What's going on?
All kinds of
podcasts, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, all your podcasts.
Yeah. I mean, especially in the context of graphs, I really like Joe's material recently on it feels like he's writing a book in public still. And I feel like the ideas are still evolving, which is very cool. But yeah, especially in this context of going back to normalization, he's doing cool stuff. So yeah, he's a good follow. Sorry, that one's pretty obvious, but
yeah, it's pretty similar to mine. I don't follow any single specific person. What I tend to do is like, with LinkedIn, it's like, I look to my network, and Juan, I'll see you post something, and let's go check that out. Or Jessica or whoever, Joe. Matt, I occasionally checked out.
You're stuck with me, Tony. You hear from me all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I view it as like, there's just not enough time in the world to like follow, single people all the time. And so I'm looking at what's basically hitting my desk today, and let's go check that out. Or otherwise just call me a scatterbrain.
I like that. Taking the info wherever it comes.
Yeah.
I think also
there's so much of it.
You're also in a very good, fortunate position to be invited and go to a lot of these conferences, events.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of opportunity to go see things. So
yeah,
that's why I love to pick your brain and get any chance I get to see you. I'm like, I corner you. I'm like, all right, Tony, you give me a dump because you've seen all this stuff, and so you can give me a summary of it. So.
Oh my God, the blind following the blind. Okay, Western civilization really is in a bad state.
I text I text Sanjeev and folks like that.
Sanjeev is another great follow.
Sanjeev, this is like everybody talks to this guy.
Yeah, he knows.
He just has that.
He's the Kevin Bacon of data.
Yeah. Well, tell him you said that.
I like this idea. I mean, you want to find people who have heard of things that you haven't heard of.
Yeah.
Right? Like graph context. I had not heard of that. So this is already a great conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, gents, this has been a fantastic conversation. I love renting, and super excited to see you in a couple of weeks in Austin.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to having a big group picture of all the former Catalan Cocktails guests.
Oh, yeah. Sounds great. And now I can look forward to my Bourbon County Stout.
All righty.
Get into it.
Cheers, everybody. Have a good one.
You got it.
Cheers.
You too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.